movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are not going to do a new movie review. I figured since tomorrow is May the 4th, Star Wars Day, we would talk about Star Wars in this episode. Why not? As many of you, I'm sure, also have, I went and saw Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith in theaters. Again, this will have been the second time that I saw this movie in theaters. I did get to see all of the original prequels in theaters when I was younger, but I also have sat and sort of caught up on Andor, which, if you have been with me from really, I guess, the beginning of this podcast, I did a review of Andor when season 1 first came out. I think I watched maybe 2 episodes of Andor, did not care for it much, kind of gave up on it, never did finish watching the first season. And so I did go back and rewatch that, and I have some new and different thoughts. Jump into talking about Star Wars, I guess. Unfortunately for me, I was born at the very tail end of when the original trilogy of Star Wars came out. So I was born the same year that Return of the Jedi was released in theaters, and therefore was too young to have ever seen any of them in theater during that time. I only ever did get to see the originals in theater when they re-released them for the 20-year anniversaries of all of those films, but I have gone and seen all of the re-releases of the prequels, and I was old enough at the time to have seen the prequels in theaters when they first came out. I think I maybe was 15 or so, maybe a little bit older when Phantom Menace came out, and then I think I was 21, somewhere around there, when Star Wars Episode 3 released in theaters. So I have now obviously seen it again. Now, for me with this one, Revenge of the Sith, and I know some of you will be grumpy about this particular take, but Revenge of the Sith is not my favorite of the prequel films. I actually really like Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. That one is my favorite one. It's just the one that I feel like I had the most, fun with. I really liked how Anakin looked more in that one as a Padawan as opposed to the way that he looked in Revenge of the Sith. And I just really overall liked that story a lot better. And it's not necessarily outside of how I typically am anyway with Star Wars, because my favorite of the originals was Return of the Jedi. And not just because that was the same one that came out the year that I was born, but it is the one that I just personally had the most, again, fun with. I really love Boba Fett. He's in Return of the Jedi the most of any of the movies. I really loved Princess Leia in that particular film. I really liked her going to rescue Han and getting kidnapped. I liked her when she was on Andor, and she always had really long, pretty hair, which as a very little girl, I connected with. I really enjoyed, and I really loved the Ewoks. I know everybody hates them. I loved them. I have a lot of collectibles, let's say, from the original films and also from the prequels, and I had a collectible of the Ewok village, the toy that came out in the 1980s of the 3 trees and stuff, and I had little Ewoks. I still do have them, and I loved that. I loved playing with that as a kid, and one of my favorite memories, probably my biggest favorite memory, and for anybody who's seen Inside Out, my core memory, let's say, when I was about 12 years old, so just a little bit before the prequels would have started being made and coming out, David Prowse was actually doing a signing tour around the United States, and he came to Colorado and was sitting in, of all places, a Hallmark card store, and my mom came and grabbed me and picked me up from school and drove straight there. He was completely by himself. There were no other people there when we showed up, and I came with my toy, I guess, my action figure ship of the Millennium Falcon, and he signed it for me and sat and talked with me for a while, and I absolutely adored him. It was the first time that I had ever met anyone from the Star Wars franchise. I was a huge fan. I collected all of that stuff when I was a kid, and he was an absolute delight. I think that when David Prowse passed away, that is one of the first times that a celebrity or someone who was in films really like had an emotional impact on me. Like I cried like a baby when I heard that David Prowse had passed away, because I did have that one-time memory of him, but it was such a special moment for me personally that I don't know, I was very sad to see him go. He always was like the living embodiment of Darth Vader for me. And I think that sometimes we just have connections and nostalgia as children that carry with us throughout life. And Star Wars obviously is one of those things for a lot of people, because it's spanned this whole 50 years pretty much. And people are just as much in love with it now as they were back in the day. So for me, I feel like one of the best moments of getting to go see Revenge of the Sith was that moment when Hayden Christensen walked out on screen to sort of introduce the film. I'm not going to lie, I got very teary-eyed. I don't know why, because even meeting him in person, and I did a couple of years ago, as some of you might know, get to go and see Hayden Christensen in person. Also very lovely. Just, it's such a strange thing to me that both of the actors who has played one of the most iconic villains are the nicest people in real life. They're just such sweet human beings and so kind. I didn't cry when I met Hayden Christensen. Like, I was very nervous, but I didn't cry when I met him. But for some reason, seeing him walk on screen and introduce Revenge of the Sith did almost make me cry. Like, I don't know if it was like a moment of healing my inner child to go and see Revenge of the Sith in theaters again. And I don't remember, and some of you can correct me for sure, because I'm sure a lot of you will remember this more than me. I don't remember there being anyone that introduced the films, like the prior ones, when those came out for their 20th anniversaries. My memory is terrible, so it's possible that that did happen and I just don't recall there being someone there. Or maybe it just had more impact on me this time around because, I have met Hayden and I did enjoy getting to meet him, and then, getting to see all the love and really accolades that he's getting now when people really didn't like his performance at the time when the films came out. I don't know. It was really nice to see that sort of culminate and sort of finish. And I do really like getting to watch them in theaters. My only thing is I really wish that we could get another set of just the fancy versions of the original films without the stuff that George Lucas added to them after the fact, without the CGI changes. I would enjoy those. I think I do have a copy of them, but I would really love to go see those in theaters again if Disney were to ever release them. I don't think they will, but if they ever planned on it, I would really enjoy that. I don't know. So for me, being able to go see Revenge of the Sith in theaters was sort of an end of a chapter, but it really did leave me wanting more Star Wars. I will be completely honest. And so that is what prompted me to tune back into Andor, because it's the only show that I feel like I've heard a lot of people talk about and talk positively about that I didn't really give all that much of a chance when the show came out. And I do understand the criticism. I will be completely honest. I do understand the criticism of Andor being a little bit more on the slower side, because obviously we are being introduced to a lot of different characters. We are seeing a lot of character development happen within what is going on, and it's sort of leading into obviously what happens in Rogue One, which is kind of a prequel to the first film, and so this is a prequel to the prequel. But I don't know if my opinion has definitely changed on Andor. I will just start there, but I don't know if it has changed in a significant way. I will say that I do enjoy watching it enough that I will continue to watch the remainder of season 2, and I can see myself rewatching it and then watching Rogue One and adding it into rewatch marathons and stuff when I do those with Star Wars. I don't hate it beyond all reason. It certainly has moved up in the line of Star Wars. Like, you know, there are shows like the Boba Fett series and Acolyte and stuff that I just would not ever go back and watch again. And even the newest one, Skeleton Crew, I didn't really care for all that much. But Andor, I can actually see where people have found the joy of it. I will say, I think a lot of Andor not confuses me, but I do think some of it is a bit more filler than I personally would like. And that is not necessarily a dig on Andor, because I do still think, you know, of all of the things that Disney has given us, probably Andor is up there in one of the better encampments as far as Star Wars stuff is concerned. But there is a lot where I'm just like, I guess I don't understand like why we needed half of the season for Cassian Andor to be in prison. I don't see how that has much of an impact other than seeing the Empire obviously is arresting a lot of people and arresting them for very, you know, stupid offenses, and how much power the Emperor is having at this point. But overall, I guess I don't necessarily see that as having that much of an impact on the story as a whole. And I felt the same way with Cassian's character when he's on that planet, and I'm not going to be able to remember which one, but when he stole the Empire ship and flew it terribly, but amazingly knows how to do it when he needs to. That's another gripe. To that planet, and was supposed to meet someone, and that person wasn't there, and so he's kind of held captive by these crazy people. I also felt like that was just unnecessary. And so there are moments in Andor that I'm not thrilled with and not totally in love with, but at the same time, I am head over heels in love with Stellan Skarsgård. I absolutely love him. I absolutely love seeing him as Luthen in, you know, this show. That's something that I definitely feel like I missed out on. I really like Velsartha also. I enjoy her character quite a lot. I think that I'm most upset at myself for not watching Andor for Genevieve O'Reilly and playing Mon Mothma. I feel like her character and her story is the one that I've enjoyed the most watching Andor. And I guess at the end of the day, my biggest thing is like, I'm not entirely sure why they call the show Andor, because I think there are enough characters, and here's my reason. I think that there are enough characters and we are following enough people that I don't necessarily see Diego Luna's character as standing out as being like the most important one, if that makes sense. Like, I do recognize they're trying to make him the person, but in the overall bigger picture, I don't feel like he is doing as much throughout this story as a lot of other characters. I do recognize that it's like his whoopsie that starts the ball rolling, but I don't necessarily see him, and maybe the end of season 2 will change my mind, but at this point, I do not necessarily see him as my main character, as my main hero that's like doing all of these things that are good for the rebellion. I don't see that in Cassian personally. I think if anything, I would give that to Velsartha. I think I would give it to her totally. I think I would give that to Stellan Skarsgård. I think that there are so many other characters in this show that are really putting their necks out for the rebellion and really doing things that they know are going to have an impact. And I almost sort of feel like Cassian is just kind of also helping. Do you know what I mean? Like, he just is also there, or he is also doing some tasks, but I don't necessarily see him as much in the fight as I anticipated, considering that they named the show after him. I don't necessarily see that fire in Cassian the way that they portray a lot of the other characters, you know, that are willing to give up their lives and willing to really just risk anything to take down the Empire. I don't necessarily see that with him, which I also would say I don't know if that is the intention with the writers here, because the way that we are introduced to him in the beginning of the show, I was expecting to see a lot more anger from him and a lot more willingness to do things and a lot more like interest in being a part of everything, considering what happened to his home planet, considering what happened to his family and everything that he was a part of. I don't know. And maybe, again, because season 2 isn't over, like maybe you'll see that switching moment where we really see that like passion to do this. And I'm not saying that he's not contributing, but for me, I just don't see him as the main character. And so I guess I don't understand why they named the show that. Like why they named the show after the person who, in my mind, isn't necessarily the biggest player in terms of the show overall. But I am enjoying it more than I did when I first started watching. So if anything, I guess Revenge of the Sith has also given me a little bit more Star Wars to have and to watch, even though I'm pretty sure season 2 is the end of Andor. And then we are not going to get any further ones from that. It just goes from the end of season 2 straight into Rogue One, which I guess is kind of a bummer for me because now that I have this new piece of Star Wars to watch, there won't be any more of it. And I will be completely honest, I'm not overly thrilled or, I don't have that much passionate interest towards The Mandalorian and Grogu. I have heard some things about it behind the scenes that potentially could change my mind a little bit if that gets confirmed in terms of what they're doing with the film. But as of right now, I'm not like jumping for joy over it. And I feel like am one of the only people alive who also feels a little bit on the fence about the film with Ryan Gosling, because even though I very, very much enjoy Ryan Gosling, picturing him inside of Star Wars, my brain just cannot do it. I don't know. Maybe I'll need to just see some of the promo. I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is for his film to come out, and I don't know. I feel like I can go either way with the Ryan Gosling film, but for the most part, I feel like the films that I have seen Ryan Gosling in, not that he hasn't done some that are, incredibly dramatic and all of that kind of stuff, but I haven't necessarily seen him in anything where he isn't also sort of just a goofball. And I don't know if that's quite what I'm looking for in Star Wars, is just like comedic dorkiness. Maybe that's what we're missing in Star Wars. I don't know. Like perhaps it'll work. Maybe I'll see the trailer for it in a couple of years when that comes out and I will feel completely different about it. But as of right now, Andor is really kind of the last Star Wars project that I have a ton of interest in, and I am enjoying it, but I do still have like critiques, I guess, of Andor, but I enjoy it enough that even those critiques or those little things that I don't necessarily enjoy or that I have questions about doesn't stop me from like enjoying the show overall and really liking some of the bits of story that I have gotten from it now that I have watched the whole thing. So I don't know. We'll see where Andor goes. Obviously, we know where Andor goes, but in terms of like the story that they're going to tell here, I am looking forward to seeing the rest of it and kind of making that connection and then watching Rogue One at the end of this season and seeing how that all ties together and becomes a thing. So those are really my thoughts around Star Wars. I don't want to continue rambling about all of the things. I would love to hear your guys' favorite Star Wars memories, people from the Star Wars films that you have maybe gotten to meet or interact with. I would love to hear all of that stuff from you guys, the movie nerds. But for now, that's everything that I have about Star Wars. Subscribe to join the movie nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.